Hey guys, it is J Star Wars 360 here with, as promised, my thoughts on the Clone Wars show overall, my thoughts on it being cancelled, and maybe a bit on its future. So, first off, I'm going to say this right off the bat. The Clone Wars sucked when it started out. It was like a dumb little kid show, like DreamWorks Dragons, Riders of Berk. It was the same schlock and generic material out there, and what was disappointing is it was a show about Star Wars, and it shouldn't have been that. It shouldn't have been this dumb little kid show, but it was. Which is why I never really got into it. But the reason why I started to watch it, and I think the reason why a lot of us got into it, is because around season 3, like about halfway through, starting with the Savage arc, the show got really good. Sorry, something in my mouth. Like, it spiked up, like it had a rocky start, but it really started hitting its stride. We got a lot of really good characters. It took characters like Anakin that weren't that likable and made them interesting. It addressed a lot of issues I had with Revenge of the Sith, like in regards to like Anakin suddenly distrusting the Council, this people just being cool with the idea of Jedi overthrowing the Republic, explaining who Sifo-Dyas is, all this stuff. And so in a lot of cases, it took a lot of stuff that made the prequels bad and made them good. And in some cases, made it better and worth it, even though I really don't like the prequels. And I think it also made me realize just how bad the prequels were. The show is just constantly explaining and developing stuff. And the fact that we need and again, I'm not dissing the show at all, but the fact that we need a TV show to explain all these plot holes and stuff in the prequels just shows how broken the prequels are. They need these movies need a show to explain stuff in them. Yeah, that's bad. But the show, Clone Wars itself, was phenomenal. It reminded me a lot of the Star Wars comics, the ones that used to be done for Marvel back in the 70s. I have a bunch of them at home. And how we just our favorite Star Wars characters going on these cool adventures in the Star Wars universe, which, read them if you want, because it's really interesting to see what the people at Marvel perceived was going to happen to the Star Wars universe back when all they had was just the original film. Now there's books and games and stuff. But back then, people perceived Star Wars in a very different way, and it's really interesting to see insight into that. But I digress. So I'm going to admit, even when the show hit that writing spike, it still had its duds. Like, there are still some episodes in the show that I really didn't like. Like, first half of season 3 sucked. There was the droids arc in season 5 I didn't care for. And even so, not every arc was perfect. There were some arcs that were just alright, like the Alderaan arc from season 5 I thought just falls alright. And I'm blanking out. I'm great. Or recently we have like 2 of the arcs in the bonus content were just alright. But what made it worth it was that there were some exceptionally good arcs. The stuff with Darth Maul, the Ahsoka arc, the Yoda arc. Those are just a couple examples of moments where the show was excellent. And so at the end of the day, I'm really happy this show exists and that we got to see all these amazing stories. I'm also grateful that the show did not... that even though the show got canceled, they were able to get some of the stories out that they did, especially the Yoda arc. So yeah, I'm really happy with the show. This isn't like my favorite show or anything, but it definitely sets a new standard for what you can do with a show based on a movie. That it doesn't just have to be schlock. It doesn't have to be like the stuff on Nickelodeon or Riders of Berk. It doesn't just have to be schlocked or dumb fill. You can actually make something really good here. And I really hope Filoni takes what he learns from the show and applies to Rebels, which I'll talk about a bit later. So now, my thoughts on the show being canceled. Now, actually, I know it's canceled. First off, let me talk about how I feel about the way the show ends. with what we have and accepting this as all we have. I am completely okay with the way the show ended. I mean, most of the big stuff, I feel like Filoni answered. Ahsoka, we answered. Darth Maul is pretty much wrapped up. Most of the stuff I want to know is more stuff I'm just curious as to where he would have gone with it. There's nothing that big that left open. It's just, a couple friends, a couple characters I'd like to know what happened to. Thankfully, Clone Wars was more like connect the dots. Filoni was just more connecting the dots, and I'm just curious to see how he'd connect the dots. Because we know what happens. It's just, it's more curiosity, and I do feel like both the Ahsoka arc and the Yoda arc were both really good ways to end the show, even if they weren't the intentional way. So yeah, I don't feel like I'm not bothered at all by the way the show ended. But I am bothered by the fact that the show did end. The fact that despite Disney and Dave Filoni saying that the show is winding down, it was not winding down. Filoni had a couple, 7, 8 more, was going to do like 1, 2, maybe 3 more seasons. He had like 3 or 4 more seasons planned probably. He was probably going to go to like 7 or 8 seasons. And what makes me really upset is he posted some concept art from their last meeting, which I'm going to assume it was them discussing Season 7, because, again, while Season 5 was airing, they were in the process of animating Season 6. Like, all these lost missions, this is what they were working on when the show got canceled, which means they had all the other arcs written for Season 6, like Darth Maul's arc, but they hadn't started animating him yet. So I'll have a link to the concept art in the description, but when I look at that, you really get upset, because you look at all this concept art and you get really excited about these potential arcs. And what's sad is we're never going to get to see those stories. So, but at the same time, it's like, this show ended on a really good note, and there are some shows that overstay their welcome and on a really sour note, like How I Met Your Mother and Lost. People are disappointed by the endings. This show, well, the endings, I say endings because there was 2 endings. One was the official ending, and one was just the remainder of stuff that never got aired, are pretty good endings. So even if the show didn't have the finale it wanted, at least it ended on a really good note. And again, there are still more stories coming. We are going to get the Darth Maul arc in comic book form. Hopefully we get the other remaining Clone Wars stories in comic book form, because they were writing, I'm pretty sure they have most of the rest of Season 6 written, they just never were able to animate it. And I'm sure they were in the process of writing some stuff for Season 7. In fact, one of the writers, I was listening to Rebel Force Radio, which is a Star Wars podcast, and they were talking to one of the writers, and apparently he was working on something for an arc for Season 6, which got pushed to Season 7, was going to be the opening arc of Season 7, and he said it was one of his favorite things ever. Again, I'm hoping we get more arcs in comic form, because look at Last Airbender. There's these comics about Avatar The Last Airbender that are being written I just blanked out. There are these comic books that are basically being written to connect Last Airbender to Legend of Korra. And most of them are right, with the exception of The Search, which explains what happened to Zuko's mom. And there is so much love and care in there. Like, as much as I wish it's animated, it feels like the show. So I don't care. So there's always hope that the Clone Wars will continue that way, and we can get what would have been through comic book form. Now a bit more on the show being canceled. So, first off, I think this showed moments like these. We need to be grateful for what we have. We need to be grateful for whatever show we have, that for shows that all the shows that we have that weren't canceled, that managed to see it all the way through, like Avatar: The Last Airbender. Be thankful we got all 3 seasons. Imagine if Last Airbender was canceled after the first season. Think of all the amazing stuff that happens in seasons 2 or 3, and imagine never getting to see it. Or maybe imagine just getting like the first couple episodes, which would have been unaired. Imagine not seeing I'm going to spoil Last Airbender, so just skip ahead like a few seconds if you want. Imagine not getting to see Azula, Mai, Ty Lee, the epic season finale, Toph, Zuko turning good, all that stuff. But no, we got that. But here's the thing. Why am I sad that Clone Wars is getting canceled, but not other shows? Because there's other shows out there whose endings have bothered me, like Samurai Jack. Samurai Jack never went back home. Cartoon Network stopped ordering episodes of that show. That's why it got canceled. Not because it was bad or anything, or they were done, but Cartoon Network just didn't order anymore. And I think the reason why I'm not sad about that is because Samurai Jack wasn't this serialized show where there was this ongoing story. It was just a bunch of random adventures that I'm curious as to where they were going to go with it. It's like it had a really good run, and it also leaves it open to more adventures, which we're getting right now. There's some Samurai Jack comic books. Whereas Clone Wars, it's a story, and there's certain characters and stuff that Filoni clearly had plans to do more with this, and unfortunately we may never get to see them. Or, let's see, or take The Simpsons, for example, or take Teen Titans, for example. Okay, that show left some stuff unanswered, but at the same time, with that show, I was unhappy at first, but now I'm okay with it because most of the questions I have are stuff that were really minor, stuff that I think are better left unanswered. And plus, the final episode of Teen Titans was intentional. That was meant to be the final episode when I think about it. And I did hear rumors that the final season of Teen Titans was ordered by Cartoon Network. Season 4 was intended to be the last season. When you look at it that way, it makes a lot of sense, but they brought in one more season, which explains a lot. But yeah, but with this show, the cancellation is tragic. Because first off, this wasn't a show that... Because not only did the show have more ideas that was... let me start over. It's tragic because the show is being canceled not because it sucked, like something like Alcatraz or whatever. No, this was a show that was pretty popular. Just recently celebrated its 100th episode, had a really strong following. The show was gonna rip him down, was getting pretty good episodes out there, and a nice following. And Disney canceled it because they didn't want people focusing on Clone Wars. Instead, they wanted to replace it with this dumb-looking generic show about the original trilogy, which, again, maybe it'll be awesome. I mean, or it could, if it sucks, it could get better, but more on that later. But it just bothers me, and because it's like, part of the reason why I can't get excited for Rebels is because it's basically, it just feels like a giant fuck you to Clone Wars. It's like Disney canceled one awesome show to give us a mediocre looking show. And here's the thing, when Avatar: The Last Airbender ended, I wasn't upset. I mean, I was upset the show ended, but I was happy with the way it ended because everything was tied up in closure. And I wasn't pissed off at Korra because it was giving me more of this world. And if Clone Wars has some more thing, if they wrapped up the show, had a finale, and then a year or two later said, we're doing a show about Rebels, I'd be really excited because it would be sort of a sequel. But the fact that it's just being cut off to give us one thing is just real unsettling. It's like, I'm just beating around the bush, but you get my point. And I really feel bad for Dave Filoni and his crew because they probably were working really hard on this show. They had so many good times, probably had a lot of fun, and they were probably really excited about some of the stuff that they were going to do moving forward, and now they're never going to get to do it. And for as much... And George Lucas was telling some of these stories. And now they're never going to get to see it, which, by the way, does lead me to wonder if George Lucas knew the show was going to be canceled when he gave it to Disney, sold it to Disney. But yeah, I feel really bad for them that they're never going to get to show these episodes that they wanted to do. And I know Filoni says, oh, it was intentional, it worked out nicely, it's happily. He's not. He's bullshitting. I mean, maybe he's trying to be optimistic about it, but what is he supposed to say? Is he supposed to say, oh yeah, it's totally... Is he supposed to say he's fucking depressed and pissed off at Disney? That's probably what he's thinking, but he has to be honest. Like, it won't look good for him or Disney if he's, like, bad-mouthing the show being canceled. And it's like when Brian Konietzko and Mark DiMartino, whenever they were promoting Avatar The Last Airbender, the movie, the live-action movie, they were talking nice about it because that's what else they could do. I mean, they had to stand Nickelodeon and Paramount's good side, when in reality they knew the movie was going to suck, but again, it would look bad for Nickelodeon and Paramount if they talked shit about it. They had to go along with it. And to be fair, they did get revenge by slipping in, like, the line at the end of Ember Island Players. They did mention on the commentary that was a jab at the film. I mean, they didn't say it exactly, but they said, I think that's supposed to be a jab at the movie. But I digress. So, before I go, I just want to say something. Dave Filoni, to everyone involved in making the Clone Wars show, I don't know if you're watching this, but if you are, I just want to say thank you so much for the show. Not everything in this show is amazing, but when it found its stride, even when every episode wasn't great, it was still pretty good, and it gave us a really unique Star Wars experience that we may never get to experience again. I hope we get to experience again, but I don't. And I really hope you guys find some way to get those stories out there. Comic books, blogs, just showing us the script, telling us, I want to know what happened in the rest of those stories. And I think the fact that the show went from me hating it to the fact that I'm this devastated about, all of us being this devastated about being canceled, and wanting to know there's more stories is a really good sign. And to everyone involved who's now working on Rebels, I really hope you take what you learned from Clone Wars and apply it to Rebels, and you make it something as well. And that it's not just dumb schlock on Disney Channel that just happens to be called Star Wars. Yeah. So in regards to that, I will be doing a vlog on Rebels when it comes out, even if it sucks. I will be doing it because it could get better. But again, I'll do more on that when it happens. And whenever we get footage of Rebels, I'll of course talk about it. And I will at some point be doing a top 11 best Clone Wars episodes since the show is officially over. I can now do my best episodes, which it's mainly just going to consist of one per arc, because sometimes an arc was consistently good, but I digress. So yeah, Clone Wars. It was an awesome show. I am okay with the note it ended, but I'm really pissed off knowing all these amazing ideas Filoni had for the show moving forward. I am optimistic that Rebels will be good, even though I have my concerns. And yeah, that's all I have to say. So, to all of you guys out there, this is JStars360, and may the Force be with you.